I have a second channel, Cube Comp MTDX. Hey everybody, now I'm going to be 18650 modding the Sanyo Xacti CG20. This is a camera I recently got off of eBay for around 20 something dollars. I've gone through and tested it and everything seems to be working perfectly fine. The timekeeping cell on this one is not faulty like the camera I'm shooting with right now, the Xacti CG101. No, sorry, 102. Which is in design similar to this. The body and stuff is almost exactly the same. So we have the camera itself, and for those who are new to the concept of 18650 modding, it's essentially taking a little 18650 cell holder like this, installing it onto the camera and wiring it in, effectively replacing the standard 700 milliamp hour battery pack that comes in the camera. Yeah, 700 milliamp hours is pretty pathetic, in my opinion. I mean, in comparison to 1900 milliamp hour 18650s in parallel, which gives you 3800 milliamp hours, huge jump. Or if you have two 2200 milliamp hour cells in parallel, it's 4400 milliamp hours. So again, huge improvement over this. And I have such a big collection of 18650s, it's like popping in double A's into a kid's toy. I have so many of things. What's nice is the availability that I have. So instead of having to wait for this to charge back up, I can just pop in another pack of another couple of batteries and just keep on going. And I want to change batteries nearly as often. So anyways, that's the whole idea behind 18650 modding. So, first thing first, this here has to go. Matter of fact, actually, let me see here. I may be able to work around it. So the battery here has to come out. Alright, that's got to go. Let's pull the plastic piece out, or the rubber piece rather. Little rubber piece. Okay. Now this is totally separated. So now we can go ahead and start preparing this thing. Actually, first I'm going to go ahead and prep the battery holder. I've already did some preparations to it. Originally, the positive and negative wires came out this side. I rerouted the negative to come out on this side because I'm going to mount the holder pretty much like this. And one thing I'm curious of is how well this holder will do with this camera. When I 18650 modded the DXG A85V, I used one of these holders, which was first of I think a 5-pack I got off of eBay, because I ran out of my other ones. And these, at least with that camera, struggled to run the camera, at least when you're doing the zoom and stuff like that. But the DXG A85V was very power hungry. Xacti isn't quite as bad, but I will say between this holder and the holders that I had previously, this one here, for example, although they look very similar, the construction of this one is a bit better. But what we can do is install it, see how it does. So this wire here is going to go through here, make a right, and go inside here. I'm going to put the 3 amp fuse inside here. I always run a fuse in line with the 18650 holder. That way, if there is for any reason a dead short inside the camera, it'll pop the fuse and does not continually short the batteries out. Now with this 18650 mod, at least with the 2 cells in parallel, you have to be very careful when loading this thing, because if you put in one cell this way and one cell that way, you effectively have a dead short. And these will get glowing red hot in about a few seconds. I found this out a long time ago when I first got one of these holders back in 2016. And I never got one backwards ever since. But I wouldn't recommend doing this on something that, you know, somebody who is not very technically inclined to be using the device. Let's say your children or whatnot. If they pop a cell in backwards and they panic, well, the thing's gonna catch on fire more than likely. So yeah, that's one thing I want to caution you guys on. And I'm probably going to be doing a modification to all my 18650 modded cameras sometime, to where I'm going to snip this out completely and wire in a poly fuse, a PTC resettable fuse. That way, if a battery cell is inadvertently put in backwards, it will just trip the PTC and interrupt the short circuit. So yeah, that's the downside of having 2 cells in parallel. But anyways, here's a 3 amp fuse. This is a reclaim off of a previous camera that I had, because I didn't have any additional fresh fuses to work with. So the negative is going to go straight into the camera. Kind of like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go ahead and heat up the glue gun and mount this on the side of the camera, so that way it's not dangling around and such. Should make matters a bit easier. So for that, I'm going to use my my black hot glue. You can buy the sticks off of Amazon, and I actually use a separate glue gun just for my black glue sticks. That way I don't have to worry about my clear glue and my black glue getting mixed up. The black glue is a bit more expensive, however it looks nicer, it flows nicer, and it's more durable. So for doing my camera mods, I always use the black glue, and it has worked well for me, I must say. So while that's heating up, I'm going to go ahead and do a few things here. Yeah, the thing is, I don't want to accidentally cut off too much wire here, but I have extra wire if necessary. So yeah, when I 18650 modded the Xacti CG20, I actually transplanted the holder off my CG10, and unfortunately when I was removing the holder from the CG10, it pretty much destroyed it. So yeah, I'm not doing that again. I'm going to leave the battery holder on my CG102 and just use that as an extra spare camera. So this camera is a 3.7 volt camera. It uses one cell, one lithium-ion cell, and these are the kind of cameras that are the easiest to 18650 mod, because you're dealing with just one S, one series. In this case, 2 parallel, which doubles the effective capacity of the cell of the battery. Some cameras out there run on 7.4 volts. Those, it gets a bit more tricky. Now, I've never actually 18650 modded a camera like that. You would want to use a holder that has 2 in series, but also you have to be careful with the cells that you use in the case of using unprotected cells. I say 2 would be okay, but anytime you finish using anytime the battery gets low, always check the voltage of each cell before you go to charge it, because the problem with having 2 in series is in some cases, if they're not balanced properly, or if the capacities are not matching or close, one cell could get massively over discharged, effectively ruining the cell. And there's some cameras out there from a 4-letter company that starts with S. Yeah, they like to do things that prevent you from using anything other than their own products. Yeah, Sony. Now, this hasn't actually personally happened to me yet, but I've heard with a lot of Sony camcorders that if you insert a battery that's not a genuine Sony battery, things typically will not work properly. Which, in my opinion, would mean that the same thing would apply to an 18650 mod. Okay, so the glue gun is getting hot, and the soldering iron is heating up as well. Yeah, it's really going to make matters a lot easier for me if I go ahead and just mount the holder. Glue gun's already hot enough, I should say. It's already oozing hot glue. Try to get enough on there to just keep the thing in place. Try to get this lined up as good as possible. What's nice about this camera being red is maybe this particular 18650 mod won't look like a weapon. Because if you watched my previous video where I looked at this camera and a CG102 that's 18650 modded, that camera is all black, and it in a way kind of looks like maybe like a little taser gun or something, I don't know. Like it could be perceived as a weapon by somebody. Yeah. Okay, so one other thing I'm going to also do here is I'm going to reroute this positive wire through the bottom of this cell holder instead of through the back. That way it's one less bend that the wire has to take, and also it slightly shortens the route the wire has to take. They're much nicer. So I'm thinking that should be safe to snip the wire right about, let's see here, and that should give us enough left over to go from the fuse to the positive terminal of the camera. So as I mentioned in my previous video, this would be a good test for the internal timekeeping cell. See how good of a condition it's in. Strip off just a little more wire, because this one here is going to the fuse. Let's see if we can get this old wire off here. Tip is not in the greatest shape, so yeah. Okay, that's off of there. Yeah, I want to make sure that any remnant wires were off of the fuse blades. So what I'm going to do is have the fuse probably in here like that. I'm sorry if the view ain't the best because of this holder being in the way of it. Something like that I think will do good. Should do just fine. Now actually, when I think about it, what I could also do, instead of having to run this wire all the way up here, I could do it the way I think I did it last time. Just to go through here. Matter of fact, that's exactly how it did it last time. So in that regard, I don't need this much wire. So I think this right here would actually do it. Give it a little bit more just to be safe. So this wire is going to make a bend, so sort of like that, to meet up with the fuse. As a matter of fact, it may not be a bad idea to go at a sort of at a right angle. What's nice about my table is it's very resistant to high heat. So soldering almost right on the table doesn't seem to really hurt it. Actually, yeah, this will work out pretty well, I think. There's going to be a little bit of slack. Not too bad. Okay, so what I got to do now is I got to apply some solder to the battery terminal. And of course, pay close attention and make sure you don't put your leads on backwards. So on this camera you have positive on the far left, no, I'm sorry, positive on the far right. It's over here, my right, and negative on the far left. And there's a little T terminal in the center. That's where like a thermistor inside this would actually interconnect, and that's only necessary for doing charging. And I don't really care too much for charging charging your batteries with the camera. What I mean to say is I wouldn't recommend charging 18650s using the built-in camera's charger. I mean, it will probably work, but it would probably take forever. So you'd be better off using a good charger like the Opus BTC 3400. So one thing I have noticed kind of recently is, at least on this camera, the inside the battery box is a metal plate. And there's paper between that. But on this one, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay some electrical tape down in the spot where the fuse will be held in place. You don't want it to look pretty or nothing like that, but you just want it to fit in place, kind of like that. And I'm going to put an extra layer on as well, over here. What this will do is will help prevent any sort of unintended current flow between your terminals to the metal piece here, which is usually connected to ground. And that should be good enough to do a trick. And when we put our leads in here, we want to make sure that we don't have any bare wire slack. What I mean to say is, we'll make sure we don't have any bare wires hanging out where they could potentially shore up against something else inside there. That wouldn't be particularly good. So, yeah. Go ahead and apply some solder to the battery terminals. I'm going to do a preload here. Matter of fact, I'm going to get the smoke detector out of here because that might fall trigger. You don't need much on there. Okay, I got the positive taken care of. Let's go ahead and take care of the negative. Okay, so everything's soldered into place. Not the prettiest, but it works. The fuse just hangs out right there. Negative comes in through here. So now we're at the point where we can pop in a battery cell and test this thing out, make sure it powers up and everything. Grab me a cell. And just pop it in there like so. All we need is just one for testing. One hot, as they say. Alright, so we have power applied. Will you look at that? We didn't have to put up with any music or any messages saying to please set the date. This thing has a good timekeeping cell on it. Yeah, there's a date and time. It's keeping track of all that. Not bad. That's impressive. So this camera has a good timekeeping cell. A lot of times those timekeeping cells, what they'll do is they'll give you enough juice to get through changing batteries, but let's say if you leave the battery out of your camera overnight, you'll have to reconfigure all the date and time and settings and stuff like that. Which, you know, that brings me to wonder, you know, why in the world would Sanyo not just save those settings into non-volatile memory? That way, if you do leave the battery out of the camera for an extended period of time, which the owner's manual, I think, tells you to do that. That's what a lot of owner's manuals will say. They say leave the, during prolonged storage, leave the battery out of the camera. Let's say if you store it for a year and then you go pop the battery back in, you're not only presented to set the time and date, but also to have to reconfigure all your settings. Like, why couldn't they just have put that into some non-volatile memory? Because let's face it, it's a whole lot easier to set the date and time rather than having to set the date and time and also configure your shortcuts and also configure your viewing resolution, turn off all sounds, all the settings that I have configured on these things. That's a lot of stuff you have to go in and configure just because it got lost out of volatile memory when the timekeeping cell went bad. So this camera, when I got it off of Fleabay, it apparently had not been powered up in a long time. The battery was completely flat, and there was no date and time stored or nothing like that. It pretty much had me configure everything. So definitely nice to see that the timekeeping cell is holding a charge now. Okay, so now I'm waiting on the glue gun to heat up. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and modify this to allow the wires to sneak in. I have to snip two holes. One here for the negative and one over here for the positive. And apparently the red colored cameras are made out of a different material. Yeah, that snapped a whole lot easier than I remember the black Sanyo cameras doing. You know, the CG10 I had and also the CG101 are both black. So the idea is you can rest the cover on like usual. I'm going to also use some glue to fill in the holes as well. Let's see if the glue gun's warmed up enough yet. Seems like it. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is secure the fuse into place. You know, one of the instructors at the college I work at asked me, when I was talking about 18650 mod, is like, why don't you, instead of soldering the fuse in, why not make a socket for it? That way you can replace the fuse. Well, my response was, that fuse should not blow unless there's something severely wrong with the camera. So in case you guys were wondering why don't I socket the fuse, well, that's why. That fuse should not blow. That fuse is really there as a worst case scenario. Should something in the camera fail, then yeah, the fuse would blow in the event of a short circuit. So in other words, it's not like I could just pop in a new fuse and be good to go. Most likely, if I was to change out the fuse, the fault would still be in the camera. It's just there as a safeguard, really. I started doing fuses with my 18650 mods back in 2017. And I have since, the only camera I didn't have fuse was my Kodak PlayTouch, which I have since retrofitted with the fuse. Alright, so now that that's good and dry, I'm going to slide this cover on. Just like that. Also going to take all the slack out of the wires before I start gluing anything down. So you're going to see a couple of black streaks on the side of the camera, but oh well. Oh well. Who cares? It's pretty obvious this camera is not in its original form. Pretty obvious. And since this red Sanyo Xacti CG20 is going to take over service from the camera I'm shooting with right now, I've already pulled off the cover that I place over the 18650 holder. It just goes on like that and has a little disclaimer on it, What's nice is this camera's red, so it doesn't look nearly as suspicious as it would have otherwise looked if the whole thing was black. Which I never had these cameras out in public anyway. Now this one I might, but it's a we'll see kind of thing. So we'll also go ahead and try to start securing these wires down. Since we've already tested this and things seem to be a go. And I always put some glue over the terminals here. Make sure there's nothing exposed. I just like how this glue just flows so easily. It looks a whole lot nicer than the clear stuff. I'm going to add some glue up in here. Because we want to make sure this thing does not inadvertently pop off of there. Yeah, what a downside to doing the 18650 mod on the Xactis, at least these pistol grip ones, is generally you can't use the lens cover anymore. Because the battery box gets in the way. But to me, that's not too big of a deal. So, it looks like we are pretty good to go now. Let's get all this loose stuff off of here. Well, this is kind of funny. The Xacti camera decided to die. The batteries went dead. Been doing a lot of videos since I had changed them. Yeah, it's funny, right as I was getting ready to finish up this video, that thing decided to die. And I'm like, I'm not going to bother with the power supply and having to change out the cells yet again. So I'm going to use the DXG85V to film just for a moment here. Go ahead and load up some cells in this camera. And of course I have to pay close attention when loading these. Okay, so they're loaded in. And we're going to pop on the cell holder, the cover rather. Interesting. The cover fits a little bit looser on this particular pack, but it's on there. So yeah, we have successfully 18650 modded the Xacti CG20. And power it on. And there you go. Okay, by now I'm filming with the Xacti CG20. So let's see if you guys can pick up on any difference in video quality like I mentioned about in the previous video. So now I figure I'll go ahead and demonstrate what this little guy here does when you disconnect the batteries. The batteries in it are about dead, so it's complaining of that now. Or it will. You can already see the low batteries thing is on. Okay, so if I go in the menu, all these things I have configured. Video resolution. All these settings. Some of that stuff I've changed from default. Date and time is set. Yeah, even what the camera presents is something I've changed from default. All these shortcuts I have configured. It's all about to go away, because I'm going to be pulling these batteries out so that way I can charge them. Okay, so batteries are out. So I'm going to load in a fresh cell. Just one isn't all we need. Okay, we now have a fresh battery in there. I'm sorry, guys. Haven't taken this off the tripod yet. So I'm having to carry this one with hand. Now what's this? Yep, it lost everything. So you can I'm sure you guys can probably understand how annoying that is. So I do plan to be on the lookout on Fleabay for perhaps a parts only CG20 or CG102, so that way I can actually replace the board inside there that contains a timekeeping cell. Once that's replaced, it should be fine. Anyways, that's that. That wraps up the 18650 mod. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Well guys, that's it for this one. But it doesn't have to be. There's plenty more videos on the channel to check out. Also, if you liked the video, please click the like button. And if you absolutely hated it, there is the alternative button as well. But yeah, please subscribe to the channel. I definitely appreciate it. And remember to click the bell so that we get notified of all updates. Also, if you're interested in things aside from computers and technology, check out my second channel. It's CubeComp MTDX. Over there you'll find videos about weather, elevators, bicycling, and pretty much whatever else I figure out to upload. So yeah, anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thank you for your support.